Hey everyone, what's up? Wanted to come on here as I just test something here for a second. Hold on, is something okay? I wanted to come on here and give you my thoughts on tonight's. It is 11:43 p.m. Pacific time, but tonight's episode of Dark Side of the Ring on Magnum T.A. called Shattered, the Magnum T.A. story, and I will say that I know who Magnum TA. I know who Magnum TA is, based on when I was younger. Flipping through channels, I would see him on the NWA WCW as a excuse me, as a commentator, play-by-play person, interviewer. I had no idea at that time that he was a wrestler. Well, I should have known, but again, that was like around I think the early '90s, late '80s, or something. But anyway, I didn't know. I really didn't know. So to find out later on that he was, and that he was basically everything people had talked him up to be about that time, looking back at his career, um, I can definitely see exactly, where they were all coming from when they said, hey, this guy is going to be the next um, Hulk Hogan, or at least the Hulk Hogan for the NWA for Jim Crockett. And unfortunately, in 1986, that didn't happen. It didn't happen or anything. But I will give him credit. They did a great job in detailing how, of course, he became a fan of wrestling, how he kind of got into wrestling. And that's kind of a unique story in its own right because, he grew up watching it with his dad, his grandfather, and all that. Excuse me. And then when he got into high school, he excelled at it. The amateur stuff, he excelled at it to the point that when he got to be a senior, he won the state championship. I think it was the state championship, and yeah, it was. It was the state championship. He won it, and then what happened afterwards is that he went to college. Of course, he went to college. As I adjust my headset here. He went to college, and to kind of help pay for his tuition, he was a bouncer at a bar. And it was a bar in the Carolinas, not Carolinas, but in Virginia Beach, where the wrestlers would go after the matches. And they would rag on him for being a big guy, but not getting into the business. Even though I think word had gotten around that he wanted to be in the business. And then that's when he encountered Buzz Sawyer. Now, just like Magnum, I've heard of Buzz Sawyer. Sawyer, I should say, I've heard of Buzz Sawyer. Seen him a little bit on television, and Buzz basically said, "Hey, I can get you into the wrestling business. All you have to do is lend me $10,000 for a license." And it was like, okay, that because and here's what's funny, because Jim Cornette had to correct us later on. But it was kind of weird to know that wrestling licenses was like $10,000, which is a lot of money. So basically after talking it over, because Buzz Sawyer even went to Magnum's family, his parents, and said, "Hey, look, I can help this guy. It's going to take 10,000 to do it, though." And what happened is the mother, believing in Magnum more than the dad, went to her grandfather, who also believed in Magnum, and said, "Hey, I'll give you the money. Here you go." But what happened is that as soon as Magnum gave Buzz the money, and he's expecting Buzz to, pick him up and get, so he can get ready to get trained. Magnum is not there. I mean, not Magnum, but Buzz is not there. He's gone. He's gone back to the Northwest. Take the money with him, basically. And Jim Cornette basically said Buzz Sawyer was one of those guys that he would help you and everything, but he was also an a-hole. He was an a-hole. He was a jerk, a manipulator, and just proved it. So what happened is that Magnum, you know, of course, Magnum was asked, did you ever get the money back? And he said no. He never got the money back from Buzz. But what happened is that Magnum, with the help of, I'm trying to think who it was, somebody in the business, got him to go fly out to Oregon, got the address of the apartment Buzz was at, knocked on his door, and Buzz was shocked, like, holy crap, like, what are you doing here? I didn't expect you. But the reason he was there is that, hey, I paid you 10,000 out of my family's money. You owe me. You owe me to train me. So that's what Buzz did. He took him, he trained him, and in less than a day, apparently he he outshined Buzz Sawyer. I mean, everybody on there, from Jim Cornette to David Crockett to Jake the Snake. Yes, they had Jake the Snake there. And Jimmy Garvin they had Magnum's ex-wife there. They had his new wife, who is Terry Blanchard's sister, I think. Oh, Tully Blanchard's sister, not Terry Blanchard. Tully Blanchard's sister, I believe, and I think is the mother of Tessa Blanchard. So yeah, they had Tessa Blanchard's mom, Tully Blanchard's wife, on there as well towards the end. They had Bill Apter and everything. So they had, decent talking heads in this. And what happened is that, each and every one of them said that, he had learned to out wrestle Buzz, within a day. And then soon after, he was just immediately booked almost 7 days a week in the Northwest. And because he was booked there, just as, Terry Allen and everything, he got noticed. He got noticed by Dusty Rhodes when Dusty was booking and wrestling for Championship Wrestling out of Florida. And he flew back there with Terry Allen. And it was there that Magnum had met Andre the Giant. Now, I don't know if anybody like Monster or anybody else knew about this, but Andre's the one that came up with the idea for Terry Allen to call himself Magnum. And why? Because at the time, you know, and you can obviously see it even if you watch some of his classic matches on the WWE Network on Peacock. You could tell that he had that Tom Selleck like look. That look that Tom Selleck, Burt Reynolds, and all of them had. So what happened is that you know Andre pulls him aside and says, You're ready to make the next step." And he's wondering, "Well, what do you mean?" And he tells him, "You're ready to make the next step by having an identity, by having a look and all that, being a star." So he gives him the name. So he tells him, you know, he's going to go. He tells him that he's going to go by the name, or he should go by the name of Magnum T.A. because of Magnum P.I., which was on at the time, the original Magnum P.I., which was on at the time, very big hit in the '80s. That had Tom Selleck, and he said, excuse me, and he basically said, that's what you should be. It should be Magnum for Magnum PI and TA short for Terry Allen. And the rest is history. And again, he got attention, just by his ethic and his work and his look. He got attention, to go to Mid South, I believe, which was the next stop. And then when he was in Mid South and having success there, he got a call from Jim Crockett Promotions, and that's when everything changed. That's when everything just changed, and the sky was basically the limit. And Dusty was with him through thick and thin. I mean, Dusty's the one that called him to go to Florida from Oregon, or from the Northwest, and Dusty was the one that gave him the call to go to Jim Crockett from Mid South. And Magnum, basically, like I said, when he got there, it's like, that's when everything just changed. Everything just changed for the time, for the better, because he was just like an instant celebrity. Because what they were looking for essentially was their version, their answer to Hulk Hogan, in the WWF. So they were looking for their Hulk Hogan, and Magnum, basically by his look, his build and everything, he fit the bill. And on top of having that fit the bill, that was very, very much a Hogan like, I wouldn't say total Hogan like, appearance, but basically very much almost on equal footing to Hogan. On top of that, he knew how to wrestle. He knew how to he knew how to wrestle. He knew how to go in the ring, and he proved it. He proved it, and he had great success there, as we all know. Looking back at the history, he had some great success. He was the hold on for a sec. Drinking some white chocolate mocha from Starbucks. Um, but as we all know, he was a success. He was a tag team champ, I think, was a tag team champ with Dusty. He was a tag team champion. He was a tag team champion, I think, in Florida. I think he was a tag team champion in Florida, I believe, of all places. He was a tag team champion there with Dusty. I think when Dusty was doing the Midnight Rider for the first time there. Um, and he was also basically the United States champion when he beat Tully Blanchard in that I Quit Steel Cage. So, so yeah, he was rising up. He was rising up everywhere he went. I think he was a champion in Oregon as well. They didn't cover like all the bases of like where he became champion, but basically they said no matter where he went, he was a star. You know, he was a star basically, a major star and everything. And again, you look back at him, you look back at his work, and he was, you know, he had it all. He had the look, he had the charisma, everything. And he, like I said, no matter where he went, he was a success. He was a success. He worked for Championship Wrestling for Florida, Pacific Northwest Wrestling. Yeah, he won the global tag team titles in Championship Wrestling from Florida with Dusty twice. He won the North American Championship in Mid South, which was his first major title. So yeah, he had a lot of success even before getting into the NWA. In fact, the championships and accomplishments that Wikipedia has here, it states that he was a five-time global tag team champ, NWA Florida global tag team champion, five times with Scott, three times with Scott McGee, once with Dusty Rhodes, and once with Brad Armstrong. He was also the NWA US champion twice in Jim Crockett Promotions, NWA WCW United States champion. He was also two times Mid South North American Tag Team champion and North America, two times Mid South Tag Team champion. Okay, let me read that. He was championship wise, he was five times a global NWA Florida Global Tag Team champion with, you know, three times with Scott McGee, once with Dusty, once with Brad Armstrong, and then when he went to Mid South, he was a two-time North American champion and two times tag team champions, once with Jim Duggan, once with Mr. Wrestling number two, and that was John Francis Walker. And then, of course, going to Jim Crockett Promotions, he was the NWA United States champion twice. You know, he was the NWA champion twice and everything. So, yeah, that was so yeah. Obviously, um, you could tell that just by those accomplishments, even though they weren't, those championship accomplishments, even though they weren't like on the level of a Dusty or something, um, you could definitely tell that he again he had the look and everything. He had the look and everything. I mean, if you look at the upper what is it, left hand right hand corner here, you can definitely just tell by that younger picture of him. He had the look. He had the look. He had everything. He had, no, to coin a phrase, A's and everything, and not to take anything away from Lex Luger, he had the original total package, movie star looks and everything. In fact, he was on the basically he had basically his looks and everything according to his ex-wife, who they interviewed. Like I said, she would go to a shoe store with him, and the women would just faint, or one woman just fainted, just saw him, knew who he was, and just passed out. David Crockett said when they brought him in to sign up with the NWA to be part of Jim Crockett Promotions, the women in the office were fanning themselves. They were just so like, you know, just so attracted and just hot for him in a way that the moment David said, or at least alluded to the fact that he noticed that, they knew they had a winner. They knew they had a winner on their hand. No doubt. They had a winner, which obviously he was right, because It didn't matter who you put him up against, whether it was Tully Blanchard, whether it was Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, any of the horsemen, original horsemen then, or if in this case it was Nikita Koloff, because Nikita, outside of Tully Blanchard, became his second biggest adversary. And they had what was known as a best of seven match, the original, as far as I know, best of seven match for the United States title, which Nikita ended up winning in the seventh match because Nikita had dominated all the way through, and it looked like it was going to be a clean sweep until Magnum won until Magnum won the next three, forcing him a seventh match, which Nikita won by cheating. So so yeah, Nikita ended up becoming champion, and even he said, "Hey, that got so much heat it was unimaginable. It was just massive heat and everything." But it was done because what they wanted to do is put Magnum on this trajectory, this trajectory towards Ric Flair. Because even Nikita said it that back then, when you were the United States champion, just like you were the Intercontinental champion, automatically made you the number one contender to the world title. So Jim Crockett Promotions being completely different in many ways to WWE, to where WWE was more like cartoony, family friendly, a bit of a bit gritty at times when they wanted to be. Jim Crockett's was all gritty, all rough and tough kind of deal, and more so than I think WWE or WWF, more so than them, they believed in kayfabe. And not only did they believe in kayfabe more than WWF, which they did, but not as much. They also believed that traditionally, if you're the second tier champion, you're the U.S. champion, the equivalent to the Intercontinental title, then you're the number one guy to go up against, to go for the world title. Just like when they introduced the United States tag titles, those were basically the equivalent to the Intercontinental Championship in WWE and the U.S. Championship there. And that if you were the U.S. tag champs, you were automatically the number one contenders for the world tag titles. That's how it worked. And I wish it still worked that way, honestly. Because that would make things more interesting. But what was I? Oh yeah. Anyway, he lost to Nikita, and it was done because they were putting him on the trajectory to become champion, to become world champion. But he had one more feud to go through, because at the time he and Dusty were paired up with Baby Doll, and I'm surprised they didn't get Baby Doll for this. But she had a brief run with both Dusty and Magnum, because she had gone babyface, or supposedly had gone babyface before she went back to being a heel. So anyway, I think it was Baby Doll or something like that. Or no, was it Precious, Precious or Baby Doll, one of them. I think it was I think it was Precious. I think it was Precious, I believe. Actually, not Baby Doll, but Precious. But yeah, he and Dusty, um, I think at one point had Baby Doll on their side, and I think they even had Precious on their side at one point. But anyway, getting a little confused there, getting off track almost. But anyway, he was going to end up in a feud with Jimmy Garvin, and it was going to be a feud. Basically, that was, I guess, just a filler a little bit to build him up to his next program, which would have been with Ric Flair. And while this was happening, TA went up to New York to talk with Jim Crockett and the rest of the NWA representatives, and they all had agreed and blessed it as well that Magnum was going to be the one to wear the strap next. He was going to be the one to beat Ric Flair. And again, before that match took place, he had a program with Jimmy Garvin, which I guess served as like I mentioned, a bit of a filler obstacle course or something. I think it had to do something with Precious or Baby Doll, one of the two. Um, anyway, anyway, as he's getting ready to finish up his program with Jimmy, you know, he's, he's having all this success, right? He's having all this success, and at the behest of Dusty, he's encouraged to go out and buy a Harley with a jacket, which he does. And the moment he drives that Harley out into public for the first time, I think into one of the towns they were, performing in, it got everybody's attention. It got everybody's attention. And instantly, that that when that happened, they knew, Dusty knew, they had a star in their hand. So basically, because he's being groomed to be the next champion, he starts living the lifestyle a little bit of the world champion of a world champion. He starts buying some cars, starts going and doing nice things, going and attending some nice events, go to nice restaurants, all the ins and outs of the rich and famous, if you will. And what happens is that after one night, competing against Jimmy Garvin, he was going home because he was finishing up his program with Jimmy. They were going to have another match the next day. So, and it was in close proximity to where he lived. So he was able to drive from the arena from the venue, wherever it was, in the Carolinas, back home. And what happened is that it was raining. It was downpouring. And he had just bought this new turbo like car. It had all the essentials that you would want in a car back then. So he bought it, and he drove it. He loved it, and he was driving it in the rain to go home. And he had taken this path so many times, but it was downpouring so much that he had to try to, he had to try to find a way to get, around it. Basically, try to, get home without an incident, right? So he goes and turns. I think it's he turns to the right or something, and he ends up hydroplaning. His car ends up hydroplaning, his tires that is, in the water. In other words, they're basically basically he's driving through the water. So to get out of it, he tries to turn, and what happens is because the road is so slippery, it ends up turning him around, and he ends up sliding over across the highway, I guess, or the road, into the telephone pole, and by doing so, he ended up having the accident, which cost him his career. And he basically explained that, and even they had not classic, but they had archival news footage of people reporting on it and everything, newspapers talking about it, and basically his one of his vertebrae or something, one of the parts near his neck just exploded on impact. It just blew up, and he was in the hospital for days. They had to get him immediately into surgery, and they would put him on morphine a lot because they weren't sure when he would open his eyes, if he was in trying to talk, if he was in pain or not. So they would put him on morphine and everything, and it was just a huge blow. It's just a huge blow to the NWA and to the wrestling fans, the wrestling community at the time. And he was such a big star. Again, he was supposed to be the NWA and Jim Crockett's promotion's equivalent in answer to Hulk Hogan. So because he was at that, or seen at being at that level, fans were upset, and they were wishing him, they were giving him well wishes. They were putting flowers down, in front of the hospital, telling him to get well and everything. They were calling up the hospital, see how he was doing, what his condition was, all these kind of things. And and the NWA was put into a situation to where they're like, okay, what do we do now? It's like, what do we do now? The guy that was going to be our Hulk Hogan is probably never going to walk again or even compete in the ring again. So they had to come up with a solution, and the solution they came up with was Nikita Koloff. And what happened is basically Nikita was coming back from Japan, a tour of Japan, and he found out. It's like he couldn't believe it at first, but they're like, no, we're dead serious. He's in the hospital right now fighting for his life. So Nikita, because of that, agreed, because I think the meeting was not just to inform him what was going on, but the meeting was also to tell him, hey, since you were his biggest rival and Dusty's biggest rival, outside of Ric Flair and the Horsemen, we're going to make you, the babyface. We're going to make you the guy that is going to, have a change of heart, if you will. And the thing was, the thing was, according to what I think Crockett said, David Crockett, was, how can you have a guy, who can you choose not to take the place of Magnum TA, who is not like Magnum in any way possible, but be somebody that fans will accept because of the connection with Magnum and Dusty. And it was ended up being Nikita because they even had footage of Dusty saying that he has that talking about what happened with Magnum and everything, but then also talking about that he has a new tag partner and it's Nikita Koloff. And Bill Apter, who like I said they had as one of the talking heads, basically showed a magazine that he had taken with Nikita with having a little tear down his eye and the caption right next to it saying I cry for Magnum. So yeah, Magnum basically, uh, you know, because of this situation, ended up turning probably one of the most. I mean, even Nikita said it himself. One of the most hated heels in the end in Jim Crockett Promotions in the territories at that time into a massive babyface. Um, so yeah, he stayed in the hospital for quite some time. Of course, got moved from where he was, the ICU, to a room and everything, so he can, I guess, start walking again and all that. And what was interesting is that the wrestlers, because again, they, like I said, they believed more in kayfabe than I think even WWF at the time. Because of that belief in kayfabe, you couldn't just have the heel wrestlers, the bad guy wrestlers, like a Ric Flair, like a Tully Blanchard, like a Nikita Koloff, Ivan Koloff, you name it. You couldn't just have them walk into the hospital in broad daylight and go visit him and see how he's doing. You know, you you couldn't just have that happen unless you break the illusion. So what happened is they said that one of the people that worked for Jim Crockett Promotion had a relative, I think it was a father or somebody that worked in the police force, and they were able to at night sneak the heel wrestlers like Flair and Blanchard and all of them, via I think a different exit behind the hospital or something like that, a stairwell or something, into Magnum's room. They were able to do that, and they show reenacted footage of Rick putting the big gold belt, which I'll give it to them. I'll give it to them. They did what they could with it, brown strap and everything, but they did a good job in making it look like the original with the NWA embroidered, I should say, on top of the big gold. But they did a reenactment of a moment where Rick went to go visit Magnum, said putting the big 10 pounds of gold on him, a big gold on him, and saying, "I'm giving you this one to keep, and when you get back in the ring, I'll happily give you the other one." In other words, Rick was basically telling him, "Hey, once you get out of this and you get back to wrestling again, I'll happily be glad to put you over and make you the next world's champion," which unfortunately didn't happen because he couldn't compete ever again. Now they did show him, showing back, showing up for Starrcade. I think it was in '87, for Starrcade in '87, and all that. Be at the side of Dusty and Nikita. So that was cool and everything. Um, but and they did show what happened with the car. The car basically was so messed up from what happened because what it did was when the car slammed into the telephone pole, it broke the telephone pole in half, basically knocked it down. And again, this was a new car. This was a new Porsche Turbo, whatever it was, and it was so messed up and damaged that they couldn't even get him out. They couldn't open the door to get him out and everything. Okay, they had to use the jaws of life and open up the roof of the car to pull him out. They couldn't even airlift him because the storm was so bad. So they had to, literally drive him to the hospital as quickly as they could. But the thing was, the car was so totaled. There was no, even if you were thinking of saving it, you couldn't. That thing was gone. That car was history, if you will. But yeah, he was able to, miraculously get out of the hospital and survive. And survive and everything. He was able to do that. And and unfortunately, though, things did not get any better because his ex-wife essentially discovered that he had been cheating on her. Now, here's the one common thing about these Dark Side of the Ring episodes when it comes to these kind of things. It's that the one. It's just that one of the common things they always talk about is infidelity. The infidelity that occurs when a wrestler is on the road and not with their actual family or with the ones they love. So Magnum, of course, being on the road and being receptible to this, um, ended up basically causing infidelity. He ended up causing his marriage to fall apart in a way. So yeah, basically his his marriage fell apart and everything, um, and it was just not really good. It was not a really good time. But he was able to obviously bounce back from that. He was able to bounce back miraculously and all that. And that's when he met Tessa Blanchard's mom. And they started out as friends. And she met, and they met. I think that what she said was in 1987. And we started out as friends, talking, hanging out, and then it just got more personal, more intimate from there until now they are pretty much married. They're pretty much married. She's now Blanchard Allen, basically. I think that's her name. I gotta look. Hold on, hold on. Let me look it up. Let me look it up here. But yeah, her name is Blanchard Allen, if you will. Well, at least that's part of her name. He is the stepfather, basically, of Tessa Blanchard. Period. You know, he is the step. Yeah, Courtney. Courtney um, is her mom, basically. Courtney is her mom, and Tully's her father. So yeah, that's kind of a unique relationship, if you will. Because when you think about it, Tully and Magnum in Jim Crockett were feud, and take a look at this now. It's like holy shoot. Uh, so yeah, and basically, Tully apparently took him 20 years to come to terms with his and his wife's falling out and relatively sparse presence in their children's lives. So yeah, he's come to accept it. He's come to accept it and everything. He's pretty much cool with it and all that. Um, but yeah, she Courtney basically started out as friends with him, met him, in '97, and just went from there. And they became an item pretty much and got married. And now he is the stepfather to Tessa Blanchard, whose father is Tully Blanchard. So I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I know people might joke and what kind of might joke to themselves and go like, eh, "No wonder Tessa's kind of not all there at times." Well, I wouldn't. Well, I wouldn't be one to say that. I just think Tessa in this case is kind of like pretty much a thoroughbred to be in this business. She just needs to get her act together. Basically, she just needs to get her act together. Again, drinking some Starbucks white mocha chocolate. Anyway, like I said, what was I? Oh yeah, he met Courtney, and again, what happened that led to this is that his other wife, and they mentioned this twice, I think twice in a couple of times in the episode. But one of the ways she found out that he was doing something behind her back was she was going through his suitcase, packing, putting away some of his things, and she noticed a couple of photos. And it took her a moment or so to realize that the woman in the photos was not him. Or was not her, I should say, was not her. And because the briefcase or whatever it was not hers. She didn't recognize it. And putting it all together, she realized, oh my God, Terry Magnum is cheating on me, or he was with another woman. And Obviously these are pictures that were taken to a party or something like that or whatever, and and I would basically say they were pictures taken by the woman that you know Magnum slept with and all that behind his ex-wife's back. And then if that wasn't enough, after he gets out of the hospital and goes home and starts to recover, he breaks down, I think, and starts basically admitting all the wrong that he's done, including the infidelity. And once he admits that, that's just too much for his ex to even process, and she just leaves him. She says, "We can't do this no more. We're done." Because they tried a year after he got released from the hospital, but once he had that moment where he just confessed everything, that was it. She couldn't handle it anymore, and she left him. And again, like I said, even though it took a bit for him to get his life back together, he did. He was able to bounce back from that in a huge way, and thank the Lord that he's doing better. He's doing a lot better now than he has previously. I mean, yeah, he has to use one of those motor vehicles and everything, but he can still drive a truck, which is good. He can drive a truck and everything. Obviously, if he's using one of those motor things, he because I have seen people, customers come into my job, and even fellow employees at my jobs that I've been at, having to use those kind of things because they can't really walk for that much, for that long, so they need to sit down and rest themselves. And obviously, he does this in a way that to where, not only is he still able to drive a truck and everything, but obviously he can maybe, he could use on occasion for a limited time. I'm assuming a walker and maybe even a cane. So, but yeah, he is. I'll tell you this: if wrestling wanted to give him another shot in some kind of, let's say, authority role, or something like cameo roles, like motivational speaker roles and all that for AEW or WWE on camera, you know, just like they did with Freddie Blassie during the invasion, the beginning of the invasion storyline. If they wanted to put him in a role like that, I wouldn't have no issue with it, and neither would anybody else. Neither would anybody else. So yeah, overall, he definitely looks like he's doing good for himself. It is one of those. Excuse me. There, it is one of those situations where even he admits that looking back in his career, because he was asked, the question of if you could look back at your career, without the accident happening, what do you think you'd be seeing? And he basically said he sees himself being the world champion, defending the title, as much as he can, until the time would come for him to pass it on to the next 20 something year old to run with after him. Because he said basically his plan was, look, I'm going to be the world champion at 27, hold it until, or at least have it, until I'm 30, like maybe hold it up until 30 for 3 years, like let's say Hogan held the WWF title, or at least hold on to it, or at least not hold on to it, but win it several times back and forth. But basically, he said he wanted to have a career to at least 30, even if it was as world champion, retire, and then do NASCAR. Because he basically said, in his opinion, he doesn't think anybody would want to see someone in the late 30s, competing in the shorts. He just doesn't believe in that. And obviously, in my opinion, he probably feels the same way today. Like, hey, once you get to 37 or at least your mid 40s, you should hanging it up and spending time with your family or contributing to the business in a different manner. So, so yeah, I mean, obviously, if he felt that way then, with that being his original plan, he probably feels the same way today. I don't know. But yeah, that was his plan. His plan basically was be champion in his late 20s, and by the time he reached 30, 31, retire and go off and do NASCAR or something. But yeah, overall, I thought this was good. I thought this was a overall very good, very encouraging, a story. It definitely because you even have, like I said, Magnum T.A. saying, "Hey, if the accident did not happen, yeah, I could see myself being the world champion and everything. I could have seen basically, he already had the blessing of it happening. So yeah, he said basically if the accident didn't happen, yeah, he could have saw himself being the world champion, defending it, as long as he could until they decided to have him pass it on to the next 20 plus year old to carry for the next year or so. you know, um, but yeah, overall I thought overall I thought the episode was good, and I'm really hoping they do one of those behind the scenes, like because one of the things they did in the first and second season is they would do these confidential episodes after like the first half of a season or after the whole season was over. They would do these confidential episodes where they'd be basically like, repeating the episode, but now they have extra content that you didn't see before. But they also have like a round table, with the creators and the narrator and everything. In this case, Chris Jericho and Ivan Hudson or whatever. Evan Housen and his friend. So I hope they do that again because I think that'd be really interesting, especially if they were to do that for this one, for this Magnum T.A. one. But yeah, I thought overall it was good, and I highly recommend checking it out. I really do. Next week, even though they listed this as the one, even though this episode was listed, last in the listing of episodes they were going to do this year, for Dark Side of the Ring, this episode, even though it was listed last, in the like I said in the listing of topics and things they were going to talk about, it's going to air next week, and that is the Graham family. And I think it's Solomon said it best. I think Solomon said it best. Jason Solomon. He basically said that next to the Von Erichs, the Grahams were the most tragic family in wrestling. That yes, the Harts had some tragedies too, but um, outside of the Von Erichs in their tragedies, you had the Grahams. Mike Graham, Eddie Graham, and all that. You had them, and everything that happened there. So that's going to be an interesting episode to watch. If not, as some people have said about some of the episodes they covered in the past, like the one with like the episode they did called "In the Shadow of Grizzly Smith" and a few others. Like the Benoit one and stuff. Um, and I think even Pillman and everything, because they've done some really dark episodes. Believe me, this will probably be the darkest one they've done, not just this season, but for the entire series. Probably the darkest one. So I'm looking forward to it and can't wait to see what they do. And I got to give a big shout out to the guys behind Dark Side of the Ring. You guys are doing a tremendous job. I cannot wait to see what you have planned for a season 5 if you do one. Because honestly, folks, there is a lot they can do with a season 5, and I'll probably do a video on that later. But again, I recommend checking it out. And until next time, guys, you know where to support me. Super live chat during the premiere, where you can also do some super chats now because I got monetization back. Also do super thanks, as well as check out my Teespring store and everything by clicking on the links below in the description, as well as on the display once you bring that up. And again, live chats are open live chats will be open during the premiere here, along with super chats, guys. Again, like I said, check this episode out. I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. So until next time, guys, that is my review of the second episode of season 4 of Dark Side of the Ring on Magnum T.A. called Shattered, the Magnum T.A. story. Again, check it out, guys. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it.